Visionary.
Create.
She.
Digital.
Hello.
She says.
Listen.
Just to give you a bit of background on us before we introduce Claire, Faye and I are sports communications specialists. I was a sports journalist for 10 years for The Guardian, amongst other people, and broadcaster, and we've both worked with governing bodies within sport, with brands, with community sport, with elite athletes, and we work very closely with Claire and with other elite athletes, including a tennis player called Elena Baltacha, who was until recently British #1 in tennis, women's tennis in the UK, and we believe passionately, as I think probably most of us in this room do, about spreading the word about women's sport and empowering women, and we like to think that's a role that we can try and help fulfil. We started our company 2 years ago, very much with that remit to try and help athletes, particularly female athletes, empower and promote themselves more effectively. The good news is that disconnect between conventional media and fans and people who are interested and engaged in sport is becoming increasingly less relevant. And the reason for that is the rise of social media over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, and that's something that Sue touched upon in the question and answer session. And this is an area that we work a lot in. And how it empowers athletes is it allows athletes to proactively promote themselves. It allows athletes to take control and remove the filter that traditional forms of sports journalism was there. So it's a way of athletes connecting directly with fans and also with media and also with sponsors, crucially. So you're not reliant on somebody choosing to write about you as an athlete or not, choosing to cover your achievements. You can actually directly take control of your situation yourself. Let's look at some good examples of elite athletes doing this. These figures are from the Olympics. Of all the athletes who increased their social media reach, the top 5 of them were women. This is Gabby Douglas certainly was the overall winner in this particular race. Douglas was the first, in case you haven't heard of, the first African American gymnast to win an individual gold at the Olympic Games, and she increased her social media reach by 31.3%. She was also the most clicked athlete on NBC's Olympics website, which, as you can imagine, has a fairly significant reach. And she enjoyed 11 million more views than Michael Phelps. That's 11 million more. And she's a good example, along with all these athletes, of how the Olympics really showed up, I think, just how important social media is for athletes, female athletes, and how it really empowers them. And as you'll see, the top 5 average daily mentions during the Olympics, 2 of those are women, 2 out of the 5. Now, I think it's fair to say that even as much as strides were made in terms of coverage of women's sport, I think we'd be hard pushed to say that was reflected in conventional media. So let's look at which elite athletes are playing smart when it comes to social media. And we'll start with Serena Williams. This is Serena's Twitter page. Now, she may or may not get some help and strategic advice on what to mention, but she's a very good example of somebody who uses social media and Twitter in particular to promote her brand. Now, where this comes in, where this has a commercial implication, and it goes back to what Sue was saying in the excellent Big Deal report and the lack of sponsorship opportunities in women's sport, this is where social media can actually really have a significant impact. If you look, this is where Williams will promote with gratuitous mentions of her sponsors: Wilson, Nike, Gatorade. There's no accident she's one of the most marketable female athletes of all time. She is a huge commercial player in women's sport. And the way she's used Twitter has certainly been part of that. Whether it's engaging with celebrities and providing a kind of a crossover from sport into the world of celebrities, which is something Serena in particular has done very effectively. Whether it's mentioning brands, HSN is Home Shopping Network, who happen to be one of her sponsors. And she's not always that subtle with her sponsorship mentions, but she's certainly very effective. Another athlete who's, used Twitter is, can give you an example of how this works with a British athlete would be, this is just something I was looking at last night. This is Amy Williams, who won a gold medal in skeleton at the Vancouver Winter Games in 2010. The various things that she talked about having a cup of tea, putting her pyjamas on and watching Downton Abbey. Now, we can argue whether that's banal or whether that's an example of why people complain about Twitter and the fact that no one ever says anything important on it. But in terms of promoting her brand, that's a very effective way of doing it. Something that took her 30 seconds to send on a smartphone, probably, as she was watching Downton, presumably in the ad break. But she, think of the brand values that says: girl next door, approachable, accessible, like you. So she is an elite athlete that people would aspire to be like. And going back to what Bangs was saying, that may be one of the ways in which we can connect real women doing real sport day to day with elite athletes. And that's where social media can be effective. Another big player would be Maria Sharapova. For Sharapova, it's all about Facebook. She doesn't do Twitter. 8.2 million likes on Facebook. That is a significant commercial reach. This is coverage that she controls. So you're reaching 8 million people, and she gets to control the message the whole time. Again, look at the other pages that she likes. Just happen to be Tag Heuer, Nike Women, Head Tennis, Cole Haan, or key sponsors of hers. You'll also, on any given page, see her drinking from an Evian bottle or mentioning another sponsor. And again, with athletes at this level, it's not always that subtle. But it doesn't need to be when you're reaching 8.2 million people. So these are just some examples of how very high-profile female athletes are using social media effectively. So at this point, in order to give you some insight into how this can affect athletes who are not at the Sharapova, Serena Williams level of profile, I'm going to introduce Claire, who quite rightly got a rounded, great introduction there from Colin. Claire's an athlete that we've worked with a lot over the last year, who's been incredibly proactive in reaching out to a wider audience beyond her sport, reaching out to sponsors, and really taking control of her profile, not waiting for somebody to decide to cover her and her fencing. And so I'll hand you over.
Yeah, I'm Claire Bennet. Thank you for the intro. These are actually my media agents, and they help me. They help me with this kind of stuff and gave me advice on how to set up a blog. And they were the ones. Actually, at the time, 4 years ago, I graduated from university in 2008, and I took the decision that I wanted to go full time as a professional athlete in training for the 2012 Olympic Games. And obviously, coming from fencing, it's a really low profile sport, not much funding. I was government funded. I'm just recently taken a sabbatical after the Games, actually, but it wasn't nearly enough to cover everything, and so I needed to go and seek private sponsorship, and so it was great that these ladies told me that I could take the control and empower myself. And I actually went out. To be honest, I was saying to Faye, can you please do the slideshow for me, because I'm a massive technophobe. I don't know how to do that, but it was just instinct. It was gut on how to approach people. 2008 was a crappy year for finding personal sponsorship because of the recession. Also, apart from anything, I was an individual in a sport. I wouldn't say being a female hindered me by any means, but I did know that I had to market myself in the best possible way, and I made sure I went to see a professional photographer, and I got some nice photos done. I was quite young there, but I got some nice photos at the time, because I knew I had to attract attention some way, because often when I went to companies, I introduced myself, they'd understand rowing, cycling, athletics. But fencing, they said to me, well, isn't that an elitist and complicated sport? How are our customers going to identify with fencing? So I definitely had to market myself in the best possible way. And I also, I tried to speak to as many people as possible for advice. I remember Claire Balding once, I said to her, I want to get to the top of my sport, and I need to raise my profile in order to do this, in order to give myself the financial backing so that I can train full time. How do I do it? And the first thing she said was, write a blog, put yourself out there and show everybody what you're about. And I'm not, honestly, I don't think I've got particularly massive profile, but I've definitely got the biggest profile within British fencing in terms of my Twitter following and things like that, and I've definitely been the most proactive in the media, and consequently I got the most private sponsors, and it's never really been done in British fencing, so I was really happy that I had people like these ladies, Faye and Eleanor, helping me, and obviously good advice. Twitter, massive benefit for me. In fact, just like I was contacted through Twitter just to come and speak this evening, so it just shows what a powerful tool it is. And also over the Olympic Games, The Guardian saw me tweeting about fencing, and they asked me to be their expert fencing, not guru, correspondent, just covering all the fencing stuff and getting fencing out there. So yeah, I mean, Twitter is a great tool, but also you have to use it correctly. It can cause a lot of grief, especially if you one tweet. We've seen recently with the chap who criticised Tom Daley, said that his father. 5 minutes ago. Well, the person who tweeted Tom Daley got in trouble by the police. So it can be, but when used in the correct way, and I did get advice on how to. In fact, there's an Olympic BBC correspondent called Adrian Warner, and he did a BBC piece at the time when I was trying to get funding. He did a kindly, so I said to him, can you do this thing on me? Can you come to my house and make it really personable and just show what I'm going through and what I need to get in order to to become a better performing athlete. And he said to me, the first thing you need to learn is never criticise your fellow athletes or your federation or your sponsors publicly. And it sounds stupid, but a lot of athletes have done that. Have got into a lot of trouble,
especially male footballers.
Yeah,
all sorts of athletes. There was a Greek athlete during the Olympic Games who was I think we've got it here actually, who made a racist comment on Twitter. Commented on the Greek government's immigration policy, and they pulled her from the team just before the games. So there's something where if you get it wrong, it can have huge consequences. But the positive side of looking at that is it's a reminder of how powerful a tool it can be if you use it effectively.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, great. And I was just looking at my notes again, just reminded me that the other great thing about Twitter, my blog, and primarily, this is a Facebook fan page, that these ladies told me to set up. I really didn't want to do that. In fact, they said don't call it a fan page because, call it a profile page. Because I think one of the worst things about as an athlete is putting yourself out there.
Claire, it was interesting that Claire was kind of felt embarrassed about having a Facebook page, yet she kind of saw a blog very differently and saw being on Twitter very differently. So what we tried to explain to Claire was that it was no different. You're just promoting yourself in a positive way, and it's just another channel. But that was what we tried to help you to understand. That it was strange that you saw it really differently.
Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to say was really importantly for my sponsors, because I believe definitely if you have any kind of sponsorship, it has to be mutually beneficial. And for them, I didn't just want to sort of take. I always wanted to give back. It was the first thing I wanted to do, and so it allowed them to share my journey towards 2012, and also it allowed people who were following my journey to also send me messages of support and encouragement, and it really helped me in the lead up. So yeah, I mean, just to finish, I suppose after such a successful games, especially for our women in sport, I I hope, I don't know if hopefully we're not going to get caught up in this sort of snowball effect of hype and media hype, but I do hope that women have now overturned this culture whereby we're seen as kind of struggling or second best, and hopefully we can now, with the likes of like Jess Ennis and all the boxers as well, and our rowers especially, so many female athletes surpass themselves, and fantastic for us to get the media spotlight, and hopefully we can keep that going, and I do believe social media is the platform to spring from, basically.
Thank you.